everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors, and I am your host, Alba Arango. In today's episode, I want to talk about the hero's journey. And if you're writing like YA or sci-fi or fantasy, the hero's journey is almost expected by your readers, and most likely agents and publishers would love to see the hero's journey in your story. But even if you're writing like romance or mystery or even memoir, the hero's journey can be really helpful in helping you kind of outline your story and making sure that all the important elements that a lot of readers are looking for in your story are there. So, with no further ado, let's get down to it and let's talk about the hero's journey. Alrighty then, today's episode will be in two parts as always. Now, the hero's journey can oftentimes be broken down into 7 steps or 12 steps, just depending on which school of thought you are looking at. I'm going to talk about the 7-step hero's journey, just really breaking it down to the very basic elements. But if you want to delve deeper and have more benchmarks that will help you in guiding your story, then I would look into the 12-step elements of the hero's journey. And it's really easy to find. All you literally do is do a Google search for the hero's journey, and you'll get all kinds of templates, you'll get all kinds of descriptions. So it's really, really easy to do. But I am going to talk very basically about the 7 basic steps of the hero's journey. And I'm going to break it up into 2 parts. In part 1, I'll talk about steps 1 through 4. And then in part 2, we'll delve into the last 3, maybe possibly the more important of the 7 steps, steps 5 through 7. So here we go. Let's get down to it. Step 1 of the hero's journey. Now, if you're not familiar with the hero's journey, you actually probably did cover it like way back in high school in your English class, but it was a long time ago for some of us. And really, what you remember from high school is probably not, hey, I remember in English, we went over the hero's journey. You're most likely remembering, hey, do you remember that crazy time at the football game? Or, hey, do you remember those out-of-town crazy band trips we went on? Maybe the hero's journey isn't exactly on the tip of your tongue on what you remember from high school. So let's break it down. What is the first element of the hero's journey? So the first element is actually just very generically known as the ordinary world. And this is actually, pretty self-explanatory. It's literally, you're going to have your hero, and you're introducing them to your reader in their normal environment. This is their everyday life. This is what happens to them on a regular basis. Whether you're talking, sci-fi or fantasy or even romance, this is just your average day in your hero's life. And that's kind of where most stories start. And that's a good place to start. And you want to get your reader familiar with, your main character, their main flaws, what their life, what are they unhappy with, whatever it is, establish that at the beginning of the book. Then you move on to part 2. And part 2 is called the call to adventure. And this is the part where the disruption occurs, the murder happens, or some major, death in the family, or something major happens that is going to transform your hero's life forever. All right. So this is a really important event, and it could be whatever you want it to be. It could be something, that is happening that, oh my gosh, think of the Hunger Games. Now suddenly, her sister gets called and no, she takes her place. Well, this is going to transform Katniss's life forever. So what is that element that is going to transform their life forever? So this is what you're going to try to establish in the call to adventure. Now, part 3 is called the refusal of the call. And this is kind of like, well, out of, fear or out of, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not the chosen one. I don't think this is really, where I belong. This is when your hero is really hesitating. I can't go with you to Alderaan. My life is here. That kind of thing. Oh, that's for my Star Wars fans. I figured, with The Mandalorian out, I should probably at least make some, Star Wars references here. But this is the refusal to call, and there has to be, some hesitation. Can they really do this? Can they really go on this adventure? Can they really go on this quest? Can they really go look for the treasure? Can they really do this? I mean, they're not that person. They're not brave. They're not a leader. They're not the person they need to be to take on this mission. So then step 4, which might be the big breakthrough for this, and that is what we call crossing the threshold. And this is when your protagonist, your hero, leaves his ordinary life behind and makes the decision to do it, to go on that quest, to go on that adventure, to seek out that treasure, to go with Obi-Wan to Alderaan. Whatever the case may be, this is when your hero makes that internal decision that that's what they're going to do. They are going to go on this quest. And this is when they leave their ordinary world and cross over into now the new world where the rest of the story takes place. Now, before we get into steps 5, 6, and 7, it's time for the crazy law / writing prompt. And if you are new to the podcast, every week I give you a crazy law. And this is a law that once upon a time in history was a real law. And your challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to write a short story based on that law. And it's just kind of a way to, flex your writing muscles or give you a distraction from your work in progress. All right, here we go. This week's crazy law. In Blythe, California, it is illegal to wear cowboy boots unless you already own 2 cows. I would love to know really why that became a law, but my imagination is having all kinds of ideas of what I can do with that. Hopefully yours is too. But for now on, let's get back to the hero's journey because, hey, you can always write the hero's journey about that law if you want to. All right. So now you've got, your ordinary world already done. Your hero's got the call to adventure, but he doesn't really know if he wants to do it. And he finally decides that, yep, he's doing it. He's crossing the threshold. He's moving into that extraordinary world. So step 5. Now, this is the one where probably the bulk of your novel is going to take place. This one is called Tests, Allies, and Enemies. And this is really where your hero is going to face, a bunch of challenges. He's going to, make some relationships. Some are going to be good. Some are going to be bad. He's going to find out whether or not some of his friends really are his friends and whether his enemies are really his enemies. And this is the part where everything gets challenged, where he, meets his nemesis and he's got to, combat his nemesis in a number of different ways or whatever it is. He's getting close to finding out who his nemesis really is. All of this comes out in this part. And so this is the big part of it where you get to actually, do a lot of your creative writing and where this is going to go. But the last 2 elements are very, very important. And there's sometimes ones that are kind of skimmed through or people just kind of get through it really fast and you really shouldn't. And that is step 6 is called the ordeal. And you can refer to that in many different ways, including the climax. This is where your hero faces his greatest challenge. Sometimes his darkness that he has to overcome, but it is his most dangerous challenge. And it is always at the end, right? You guys know in every movie and every book that you've read that there is always that culminating scene where you really have the final face-off. And that is an important part that you don't want to rush, that you want to give your readers, just that element that they're really, really wanting to see. And I remember talking to one of my teacher friends a long time, and the movie, the last part of Twilight movie had come out, the second part of Breaking Dawn. And there was that scene in the movie that was not in the book where there's an actual fight scene. And it was spectacular. And I remember this teacher saying that's what was missing in the book. Like we needed that final confrontation because there was that kind of final confrontation in the book, but there was no action in it. It was a standoff and there was no real juicy action. And that was kind of, according to this teacher, really lacking in the book. And I think they were right. Like that really would have been a scene that would have been spectacular to actually read in the final book of Twilight. And that's kind of what your readers want to see. They want to see this final element, this last challenge that they have to face. And as a result of that challenge, then your hero is changed. What they have been fighting for is finally realized. And that's when their personal transformation happens. And that is what you want to see. That's why you don't want to rush this element. You want to have that exciting scene at the end. And then your hero is now a changed person as a result of the whole story, but culminating in that climax, that aha moment, that moment where they realize who they really are, that empowerment, that whatever it is you are writing, but that has transformed your hero. And that is an important part of your book. And that really, don't rush it. Don't just go through, I want to fight this fight scene, and then boom, the end. Really milk that scene where you now have this transformed character. And then the last and final element is the return with the elixir. And this is when your character returns to their ordinary world, but they are a changed person. Whether they have completed the quest, whether they have found that treasure, whether they have realized they were the chosen one, whatever it is, now they're going back to real life and their ordinary world, but it's different now. And of course, if you're writing sci-fi and fantasy, they might actually be in a completely different place than their ordinary world was at the beginning. But their life now is stabilized and they are a changed person. Don't rush this either. Let your reader enjoy seeing your transformed character and embracing who they are now that they have become a changed person. So those are the very basic 7 steps of the hero's journey. And again, if you want to delve deeper into more benchmarks to hit, where does the mentor fit in this at the beginning? Where should they be? Look into the 12 steps of the hero's journey and delve a little deeper into it. And of course, you don't have to do the hero's journey in your book. It's just a great kind of guideline. It's kind of like the Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not law. They're more like guidelines, but they are a great guideline to make sure that you're really getting that emotional impact that readers want to see and feel when reading your book. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, be sure to give this episode a like. Be sure to subscribe and like and rate my podcast. I would love to see some feedback on this. And of course, I drop a new episode every week. So until next week, stay safe and I will see you all next week.